I want to begin by extending my thanks to Eric Dubays' research, because it contributed to my realization that the Earth is indeed flat and stationary. The glaring omission on behalf of Eric Dubays is his overlooking of the power of the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuits. In fact, the word Jesuit is seldom mentioned in Dubays' discourse. To give you just a very brief oversight of the absolute power of Rome and the Jesuits, often people see Jewish bankers as being the top of the pyramid. However, it is the Jesuits who control the Jews from behind the scenes. So if we take banking, for example, banking was first created by the Knights Templar, that is, Catholic Knights of Rome. The Knights Templar would take care of the wealth of pilgrims and travellers embarking on dangerous journeys, giving a coded receipt for their gold. Anyone who used the Templars' service could cash the receipt with another Templar somewhere else, rather like a bank looking after your money. Now, of course, this was all done for a fee. This is where Knights of Rome invented usury. Wasn't the Jews. Now, the Roman Catholic Medici family were one of the first banking clans, and are still very powerful to this day. Even the word bank comes from the Italian banco, which was the counters that the Medicis would use for exchanging and lending money. As far as the pyramid structure of control, Medici ranks much higher than the Rothschilds. But even the name Rothschild means red shield. It was the Roman soldiers who used the red shield in battle. According to the Encyclopaedia Judaica, the Rothschilds are given the title Guardians of the Vatican Treasury. Now let that sink in for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. The Rothschilds are appointed by, and therefore work for, and answer to, Rome. In his book Rulers of Evil, Frederick Tupper-Saussy writes, "The appointment of the Rothschilds gave the Black Papacy absolute financial privacy and secrecy." End quote. Wherever you find a Jew in a prominent position, you will often find a Jesuit working alongside him, pulling the strings. And the reason that the Jesuits use the Jews as the face of the international control network is simply because they don't like them. In fact, the Jesuits despise the Jews. We know this from the history between them, and by reading the Jesuit extreme oath of induction. I quote, "And even to descend as low as to become a Jew among Jews, that you might be able to gather all information for the benefit of your order as a faithful soldier of the Pope." So not only does Rome control certain elitist Jews, but she will also have the Jesuits pretending to be Jews in order to gather information and, of course, add verisimilitude to the incorrect notion that Jews rule the world. It's like if I were going to rob a shop or commit a crime. I'm not going to do it with a name badge on. In fact, I may even frame someone who I dislike. And that's exactly what happens with the Jews. All I would say is woe to those Jews who do allow themselves to be used in such a way, particularly considering their historical suppression by Rome. Now remember folks, I'm not going into massive detail here, I'm just giving you a brief overview of the Jesuit and Vatican control for those who weren't aware. Another group that Eric Dubays likes to blame for everything is the Freemasons. Freemasonry was used by Rome to attempt to control Protestantism. Freemasonry could exist in countries where the Jesuits had been expelled from. The Reformation is the key to everything. As author John Daniel concurs on page 302 of the Grand Design Exposed, quote, "The truth is, the Jesuits of Rome have perfected Freemasonry to be their most magnificent and effective tool, accomplishing their purposes among Protestants." End quote. Now, parallels can be drawn between Freemasonry and the Jesuits. For example, their symbolism. The symbolism of Freemasonry and the symbolism of Rome are almost identical. You'll find all of the symbols of Freemasonry in Catholicism. If you thought that treading down the shoe and showing the knee was just a Masonic thing, then you were wrong. It comes from the founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius of Loyola, who presented himself in such a manner when asking for the confirmation of the order. Washington, D.C. is a very Masonic design, and bears a strikingly similar resemblance to the Vatican. In fact, When it was built, Washington, D.C. was referred to as Little Rome. The symbol of the double-headed eagle is very prominent in Freemasonry and is also found in Catholic cathedrals. The Jesuit logo bears the initials IHS, standing for Isis, Horus and Seb. These same initials can be found in Masonic temples. Frederick Tupper Saucy wrote, "Hold Freemasonry up to the light and you cannot help but see the black papacy's watermark." End quote. American historian James Parton wrote, "There are still old ladies, male and female, about the country who will tell you with grim gravity that, if you trace up Masonry through all its orders till you come to the grand tip-top head Mason of the world, you will discover that the dread individual and the chief of the Society of Jesus are one and the same person." End quote. Or if you prefer it from the horse's mouth, then Helena Blavatsky, an important Russian occultist and Freemason, and founder of the Theosophical Society, in her book Isis Unveiled Volume 2, she quotes a 32nd degree Freemason, quote, "It is curious to note, too, that most of the bodies which work these, such as the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, the Rite of Avignon, the Order of the Temple, Fessel's Rite, and the Grand Council of the Emperors of the East and West, Sovereign Prince Masons, etc., etc., are nearly all the offspring of the sons of Ignatius Loyola. The Baron Hunt, Chevalier Ramsay, Chowdy, Sinendorf, and numerous others who founded the grades in these rites, worked under instructions from the General of the Jesuits. The nest where these high degrees were hatched, and no Masonic rite is free from their baleful influence more or less, was the Jesuit College of Clermont in Paris." End quote. So there we have Helena Blavatsky quoting a 32nd degree Freemason who tells us that Rome created Freemasonry. Moving on, Rome has controlled the media as well through Jesuit-trained Steve Bannon, converted Roman Catholic Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, Leo Kirch, the pornographer Bob Guccione, and perhaps most notably, the Knight of Malta Rupert Murdoch. He controls huge stakes in the media all across the earth. Murdoch, probably the most influential media tycoon in the world, is a Knight of Malta and therefore answers to Rome. Continuing now, Donald Trump is Jesuit educated and is surrounded by Jesuit agents in his cabinet. Barack Obama was Catholic educated and was surrounded by Jesuit agents of Rome. Bill Clinton was Jesuit educated. The Queen of England is a Knight of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, an arm of the Knights of Malta, and of course has allegiance to the Pope. The Bilderberg Group was founded by Joseph Ratzinger, and guess what, folks? He was a Jesuit. Bohemian Grove is controlled by the Order of the Knights of St. Hubertus, which, of course, is Roman Catholic and answers to the Pope. The OSS was founded by William Donovan, who was a Knight of Malta and therefore answers to Rome. The OSS transferred into the CIA under the guidance of the devout Roman Catholic James Forrestal, who was also the first US Secretary of Defense. The CIA was established by President Harry Truman, a 33rd degree Freemason with deep Jesuit connections. Now remember, Eric Dubays won't tell his audience any of this, and this actually becomes a problem when it comes to him being regarded as the authority on flat Earth. He doesn't even tell his audience the real reason the world is taught to be a spinning ball. As I am about to show you, the globe Earth lie is a Roman Catholic forged deception perpetuated by the Order of the Jesuits. Nicholas Copernicus, who was the mathematician of the Vatican, gave birth to the idea of heliocentrism in his 16th century book, De Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium. This ludicrous idea of heliocentrism was carried on by Galileo, who, in a blatant act of Hegelian dialect, was placed under house arrest after being tried for heresy. Now this was of course deliberately done to add popularity to Galileo and the globe-earth deception. The Catholic Church obviously wasn't opposed to Galileo, otherwise he would have received a painfully torturous demise like everyone else arrested during the Inquisitions. But no, Galileo lived comfortably under house arrest. Like I said, blatant Hegelian dialect. But why did Rome want people to believe the Earth was a globe? This all happened at the time of the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. Bibles were being translated and distributed, and reformers were realizing that Rome was the Antichrist system and the whore of revelations. In order to oppose this rebellion, Rome started the Counter-Reformation, which involved discrediting the Bible and turned people back to Rome as the ultimate authority. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you are religious or not, it doesn't matter. The Bible is a flat earth book, so in order to discredit the Bible, Vatican controlled Nicholas Copernicus, followed by Galileo, popularized heliocentrism, which literally changed people's perception of reality for the next 500 years.
Father Georges Lemaitre, who discovered the Big Bang Theory. And by the way, Nicholas Copernicus was a Catholic cleric. He had minor orders and was a canon lawyer. And of course, you know, the Pope Paul III was, you know, the person to whom Nicholas Copernicus dedicated his book on the heliocentric solar system. So the Church was never against the heliocentric universe. The Church was never against the heliocentric universe.
Quam Lucifer, qui nescito casum, Christus filius tuus, qui